So if you've been watching my videos, you know that a long time ago I cut up a wooden boat. This was a 1970 Grand Bank. So this is the key parts of the keel I kept. So they're 52 years old, either in the water or out of the water, and they're not rotten because this is Yacal and it's almost bulletproof. And I'm going to take this home and try to cut a sink out of it. This is a little square deal. This is where they lock. See, this is two pieces, and they have these square floating tenons to lock these together. This used to have another piece on top. The problem is they have these 3/8 bronze bolts that go all the way through, and these were the bolts that have fixed the keel to the floor timbers. And so I'm gonna have to figure out how to cut. I think it's gonna be plenty big enough to cut a sink between these. They won't come out. I tried to get them out before. And I don't think my grinder will, with my cut set wheel, will like the bronze. So anyway, I'm gonna load it up in my truck and bring it home and play with it for the next few days, see if we can't make a sink. The top is cleaned up, sanded up, it's just sitting there. And I grabbed a piece of cardboard, and this line is the center line. And then I did a parallel line to this wall and the same for this wall and a parallel line with the front, and I kind of sketched. But I think that might be the top of the sink bowl. I just need to put a uniform curve here, so they kind of match up. And I'm gonna see how big that chunk of wood is where I can cut it out of. I really should be upstairs putting insulation in because it's kind of cool today. But I'm kind of into this sink thing. Okay, we got a pattern. I think I want to make these come out a little further and use a smaller radius. But this kind of order of magnitude, we're okay. Let's go see what we got in the way of wood. Okay, well, we're close. If this is the top edge and it's going to slope down, I'm not sure how far that little block goes in there. I'll definitely hit the round bars. Maybe not this one if it slopes down enough. And on this side, there's a big hole where the nut is for this round bar. So there'll be another one over here. We'll probably miss that one. There'll be a couple of screw holes in the top with this worm shoe. Hopefully the screws will come out and not break off. It's only 50 years old. But let's do this. Let's get the worm shoe off and get the chainsaw and start cutting. Pretty amazing, 52 years, they still come out. Okay. So this is the exposed nut for the keel bolt. And this is a second one, and they have it plugged up with a wooden plug. And third one, fourth one, etc. Every one they plugged neatly with a wooden plug. I'm gonna see if I can't get them out. Seems like I tried before and it wouldn't budge, but I'm gonna try again. Pleasant surprise. They all came out. I was able to beat them out from the top down. It punched the wood plug out and the bolts came out. So now I have some very long bronze all thread for a future project, but more importantly, they're out of my way for right now, so I can get the chainsaw in there without worry. Okay, all the bolts are out. Now there's still a washer up in that hole I'm gonna have to watch out for when I get closer to it. I got my lines. I'm gonna cut it with a chainsaw, I hope, and then we'll start I don't know, with the finesse work. We have a beautiful piece of wood with just a hole over here in the corner. That might even come out when I round it over. But if not, I can put a plug in it. So I bought a new 3/4 inch bandsaw blade for my big bandsaw, or my medium sized bandsaw. And my tires that the bandsaw blade rides on decided to give up the ghost at this particular time, so I didn't have a working bandsaw, so I'm using a chainsaw. And the chainsaw made it come out more, how do we say it, artistic than if I'd used the bandsaw, because I could have controlled the cut better with the bandsaw. And the chainsaw made kind of a wonky cut. But I got the cuts made. I removed some material from the middle, you can see that. And that's what carving the bowl is all about. Just you make some cuts, you remove, you guess, you look at it, and you measure until you get it where you want it. So the chain on the chainsaw was pretty darn sharp, but it didn't want anything to do with this end grain. It really bounced around. It was hard to get it started. Going parallel, it did great, but it was challenging getting the cut where you wanted it and in the end grain of this hard wood. So what I would really like to do is to continue carving on my little sink here. But it's cloudy and kind of cool today, so I'm going to go upstairs and finish the insulation in the loft while it's not so stinking hot. Now, I want to point out two things. The reason I'm even attempting to do this is because I was not able to find a suitable sink to fit that teeny little corner. If I would have put a round sink, it would have just been super small. And two, this wood's wet. The boat that I cut up had been abandoned at the marina for like 15 years. It sat on blocks, and I've had it for 9 because I got it on my 60th birthday. I'm almost 69. So even though it's not rotten and it's sound, the moisture content's up there, and when I bring it in the teeny home, it will no longer be out in the rain. And for the most part, it won't be climate controlled because 95% of the time the cabin will be empty and it will be ambient temperature or ambient humidity, but it won't be in the rain. So it's going to dry and it's going to shrink and it's going to split and check. Pretty much count on it. Not a huge amount because it's good wood, but some. So I left the walls thicker than I probably needed to, and that's to account for that. If I get some checks or splits later on, I still have some meat left to do either resanding or just epoxy it again. But I could have easily made the inside of the bowl bigger, but I'm a little apprehensive about the future and what's going to happen to this bowl. This is my son's chainsaw. It's about half the size of my chainsaw, and for this it's perfect because my big one is a little awkward to be getting all these little tight corners. So the chainsaw removes wood way faster than the cuts at wheel, and so just to speed things along, I'm just chopping out some cuts. It's kind of scary. It's, you know, you're guessing at thickness and stuff, so I just made some cuts in the middle, kind of loosen this up, and then go after with the cuts at wheel and remove the chopped up part, and then repeat, and constantly checking them, looking at the sides. I never got it thick enough where I needed to use a caliper or any special measuring device. I could always tell by just touching it with my fingers. But this was different for me. It was kind of interesting. So this is the wheel I'm using. It's a cut zit. I think it's ZIT, maybe CUT. I don't know. I've had it for a long time. It's pretty aggressive, but it's not crazy aggressive. And it doesn't really get dull so much as the teeth gradually break off, probably because I was using it on some aluminum, which I shouldn't have been. And if it does get gummed up, plugged up, you can just put the torch on it and burn the wood out, because these are little carbide teeth and they don't care about heat. So it's been a good wheel. It's not as quick cutting as some of the newer ones, but it's not as scary either. So that's what I'm using to grind the bowl. So this whole process is just basically turning wood into dust and noise. So you can't see it, but my box fan's right there in front of me, and it's keeping all this stuff away from my face for the most part. Still a lot of noise. I do wear ear protection as much as I can, because I got old noisy ears. I'm trying to hold on to whatever I got as far as hearing goes. This is one of those operations where we always keep two hands on the grinder because, well, you can see. So I was just wondering, how deep does the sink need to be? Brushing your teeth and washing your hands? Getting kind of old. So right here I switched from the cuts at wheel to a new flap wheel. I think this was pretty aggressive, like a 40 grit, 45 grit. And it didn't work good. It had sharp edges, and it was just basically cutting lines. It wasn't fairing it out very well. So later on I put on an older wheel, like an old 120 grit wheel that was almost worn out and nice and smooth, and it did much better than this new wheel. I didn't keep this on here very long. This is the next day, and you can almost see, yeah, you can see where I have plugged the screw holes and the two bolt holes with some wooden plugs that I cut out of the same material, so they matched up pretty well. And here I'm using the drill press with the depth stop set at about 1.25 inches, so that's as thin as I'm gonna get the bottom. And I'm just hogging out or wasting the inside part. Might have should have done this sooner, because this is a quicker way to get rid of that wood down in the bottom that's so challenging to get the grinder in. But it's kind of, you know, it's kind of guesswork as to how close to the edge can you drill the holes and not make a thin spot. But apparently I think we came out okay. Now I have a flat bottom to work to. That'll be my final depth. But, it's tricky the further down in the bowl you get. The less angles you can turn the grinder and have it still do what you want it to do. Then I've got the 5-inch random orbital into play, and I've got some 80 grit, and then I used 100, then 120. It will almost get everywhere. There's some of the inside corners it can't get to, and ended up having to sand those by hand. Okay, 1 coat of epoxy inside and outside. The outside I've sanded down so I can put a coat of varnish on it. The inside I'm getting ready to sand down, because it has little, I don't know if you can see them, it has little bubbles and little dust flecks and stuff. It needs to be sanded down. And typically you cover epoxy with varnish to protect it from UV. There'll be no UV, so I could use epoxy, But I'm gonna have my gloss varnish out anyway, so I think I'm just gonna put a coat of varnish on the inside after I sand it down a little bit. So I picked up my sink drain this morning from, guess where, Home Depot. And I'm looking through my bits, and I think my best bet is this Fussner bit. It's just a little bit bigger than the threads. Drilling the hole is going to be easy. Then I got a bevel at the top, which we'll see. Not so sure about that, but we can drill the hole. Should be no problem. Well, I did some sanding. I did some filing with the rats. I even got the random orbital down in here a little bit, and I got a super good fit. So put the epoxy sealer on the inside, let that cure. That'll probably be all we can do today. So I moved over and invaded my wife's studio because it's much less dusty than my shop, although there's a fair amount of dust in here. And I'm putting what turned out to be the final coat of epoxy on the inside. I didn't put varnish on the inside. The epoxy came out not perfect, but pretty darn good. And I'm ready to install the, well, after this cures, I'll be ready to install the sink drain, which I will use clear silicone. I'm not a super silicone fan, but in this application it's probably going to work. And then I'm going to screw the bowl down to the countertop. Again, I'm going to use clear silicone, and I'm using it because it makes a pretty good little gasket. It's pretty rubbery, and it doesn't stick worth a hoot to anything. So if I do need to remove this sink later on, I'll be able to get it up without breaking anything, probably even without messing up the varnish. So that's the plan. So I got a good coat of epoxy on the inside. I think this is the third coat. And the outside, I had already started putting varnish on it, so I don't want to put epoxy over varnish. So I got it sanded down pretty well. I'm going to spray another coat of spray varnish until I get a good even glossy finish. I got a bunch of layers of varnish on here, but it's spray can varnish, which is mostly solvent. So we'll spray it again. So I got a dry run here. The drain is in the sink, and a hole is drilled in the top that accepts the drain. So I'm off to, guess where, Home Depot, to get some silicone caulk. And I'm gonna set this, I'm gonna screw it from the bottom, and then we'll be on to the next project, which may be the faucets for this thing. I got a glue up done, but it's epoxy, so nothing's happening with it today. So I'm taking a chance here. I'm mixing up a bunch of old paints to try to get a decent wall color. And I open this can, and I don't know, but I think it might be pretty old. But it's kind of a yellowy, which is not what I'm after. So it may end up getting trashed. I found some light gray. Now this is more like what I'm after. I'll pour this in there. So I painted this with my concoction. I think it was a little dark. So I splashed, I don't know, maybe a half a gallon or a couple of quarts of the white, which is this wall color, but it's flat, in there and mixed it up. And now I got this from here to here. I'm gonna let that dry. And it's kind of weird because this is kind of got like a bluish tint. This has kind of like a beigey tint. But as long as it doesn't make you gag when you walk in the door, I'm gonna paint it. And I think I have enough to do all the walls because that'd be a problem if I ran out. I wouldn't be able to match it. I'm gonna let it dry and see what it looks like and get She Who Must Be Obeyed to come out here and bless it. Unlike myself, Debbie can paint in a straight line, so she helped me cut around all the windows and doors. Big help. Interior paint complete, except for the bathroom. I'm gonna repaint the bathroom. That paint I use is very, very flat, and I don't think it's washable, so I'm gonna put another coat. I did paint the window trims with some washable paint. All these window trims are washable paint, and the walls are my mixed paint, which is partially flat and partially semi-gloss, so I'm hoping it's going to be kind of washable. So pretty happy with the color combination, but I don't have enough to paint the bathroom. I don't want to run out, so I'm going to keep this for touch up for this room, and I'm going to mix another concoction for the bathroom because we have lots of containers of whites and off-whites that my wife uses, like quarts and quarts and quarts, so I'm not gonna buy anything. All right, this is it. This is the sink. Cost nothing. Well, I did buy a drain, but it did take a few hours to make. Might have to put some kind of backsplash because that paint back there won't hold up to constantly being wet and wiped down. Maybe some copper, which I have, or maybe some stainless, which I have. And then I'll have to make some sort of faucet, because obviously a deck mounted faucet won't work. But that's to be done another day. All right. So you can see I've been working on the kitchen cabinets, and I pulled out a couple of gnarly pieces of sycamore that I'm going to try to make the countertops with. So stay tuned next week. We'll get some of this done. Well, no video next week. It'll be the week after. All right. Thanks for watching.